Once I knew the design of our house, I knew that one of the things we had to add was a front porch swing. And with a view like what we have, I knew I had to get busy. My design is simple. It's big enough to fit a crib mattress and completely made of cedar. So, what I did is I started with these 1x3 cedar boards, cut them to size big enough to fit a crib mattress, and screwed them together with these 2.5-inch deck screws. The next step in the process was to take these 1x4 cedar planks, cut them to size using my table saw, and these are going to act as the support for the middle of the porch swing. Now this porch swing measures about 53 inches wide, so I cut 4 of these to size, 1 for each end and then 2 spaced evenly in the middle.
Remember, we gotta clean up after our messes.
That's a lesson for all of us right there, not just my 4-year-old. I finished cutting these supports, and then I actually went ahead and I brad nailed from the outside each one of them. And then I went and hit them with a screw in order to give them the extra support that they needed. These don't necessarily have to be perfectly even, but if you're OCD, you might as well go ahead and mark them so they're spaced evenly. Again, they're just acting as supports, so do what you can with them. A quick note here, you don't necessarily have to make yours in full cedar. I just chose cedar because it's weather resistant naturally, and I'm really not going to have to do too much to kind of preserve it. Once I finished securing my supports, I then took these 1x6 cedar boards, cut them to size lengthwise, and then I took my 15 gauge nailer, nailed them into place, 1 on each end. And then I took the other 2, and I actually left a little gap in between them, just so that there could be space for water or air to come through. And again, a mattress is going to go over the top of this, so I didn't really need to completely cover it so much, just enough so that it could support the mattress. The next step in the process was the corner supports. So as you can see here, I took again these 1x3 cedar boards, I cut them to size, did 2 on each corner, butted them up against each other nicely so that it created a nice flush corner, and then I took my 15 gauge nailer again, put them into place, and then I was ready for the top support beams. As you can see, I missed filming some of the footage for those top boards, but all they were again, for the very top, was a 1x3 cedar boards, cut them to size and nailed them into place. And then I took some 1x6s, put them on the inside there, as you can see, and nailed those into place. What I did here was the same with those 1x6s, cut them to size so that it created a nice flush uniform look. And then I used my finish nailer and nailed them from the outside. My next step in the process was to take these 2x4 rough cut cedar boards, and these are going to act as my lower support pieces. They're going to run all the way across each end of the porch swing, and these are actually going to be what I'm going to run the rope that's going to hang from the ceiling of my porch down into the porch swing, and these boards are going to hold the porch swing up. I cut them a little bit wider than the porch swing itself because I need to drill out the holes on each end so that the rope can actually run through the 2x4 itself, and then I'm going to tie a knot on the end of it, and that knot is what's going to hold the porch swing up. But again, I cut these to size as long as I needed them, and then I went ahead and I took these 3-inch deck screws and I screwed from the very bottom up into the porch swing in order to secure the 2x4s to the porch swing itself. As you can see here, this is where I'm drilling out the holes so that I can create a big enough hole in order for my 1-inch rope to run through. I drilled a couple pilot holes first so that then I could come in with my hole saw and then drill the bigger hole that I need. But before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take these 2x4 and just, in order to create a nice clean uniform look around all the way around the bottom, I'm just going to cut this to size, put it on each end so that from the outside looking in, it's going to look nice. Here's where I took my hole saw, my 1.25" hole saw, because remember my rope that I'm running through is about 1 inch wide, so I need to leave myself a little bit of room in order to run that through. But I took my 1.25" hole saw, took me a little bit to get all the way through this 2x4, but I just went ahead, plugged away at it until I got all the way through, so I had a nice clean hole in order to run that rope through. Now to finish up with these 1x6 boards, I wanted to create a nice and clean look all the way around the edge so that it looked nice and symmetrical. I went ahead, cut these to size again, put them spaced evenly between the top and bottom boards, and again, finish nailed them in. I debated going back and forth on how I wanted this to look from the outside, but I figured this is the most symmetrical way to make it look, so I just went ahead and placed these boards like you see. Porch swing is pretty much done with assembly. Now time for finishing. I took my super cheap $15 Harbor Freight router and I actually went around the edge with a nice beveled bit so that I didn't have any sharp edges all the way around the edge. Now, this is one of the spots where I actually have kind of a bit of a regret using this just because the filler that I got doesn't really match the wood, and part of me thought that it might, over time, end up matching it. To be quite honest, don't really notice it now, but if I could go back, I'd probably choose a different filler so that it kind of blended in a little bit more with the porch swing, but that's what I did here. Just went ahead, took my filler, filled in all those finish nail holes that I created just so that it didn't have any metal poking out. And then I'm going to go ahead and take my orbital sander, take my 120 grit, and then give it a nice clean sand all the way around. The cedar that I got actually is fairly clean and had zero imperfections for the most part, but this just helped clean it all the way up. So the look I wanted to go for on this finish was more of a natural cedar look. So I got this waterproof, pretty much clear sealant from the local hardware store. took this brush and then I just lightly brushed it on all the way around. This is just gonna pretty much help it with some waterproofing ability. Again, cedar's naturally pretty weather resistant, but I figured this will just help me out a little bit more in the long run so that I can limit the amount of times I'm gonna have to refinish this. Out to the porch where the porch swing itself is actually gonna hang, I grabbed my ladder and my measuring tape and I measured so that this swing itself would sit in the middle of these two posts that you see here as much as possible. The next step in the process was to drill some pilot holes for these eyelet bolts that I got at the local hardware store. These are big enough so that my 1-inch rope can run through and then come back down to the porch swing, and they're going to be strong enough in order to hold the porch swing itself up. So this is the rope I'm using in order to attach the swing to the roof of this porch itself. About a 1-inch thick rope. I got it off Amazon. It's about $50 for about 100 feet. So I measured it to size, and then I took these extremely dull scissors and cut it so that I could have enough excess on the bottom so I can at least tie 1 knot, probably 2 knots in the bottom. I also forgot to mention, one of the best ways to make sure this swing itself is high enough and not an awkward position for when you actually sit down on it is to take a 5-gallon bucket, set it underneath the swing, and then set the swing on top. And that should give you a perfect height for when you go to tie these knots. My kids approve of it, so it's time to put the finishing touches on this thing. Just like that, with some pillows and a mattress, she's ready to go. All in all, I think I'm into this thing about probably $150, and took me only a half a day to do. So I'm very pleased with it. Completes the look of the front of our house, and it's pretty fun to sit in and watch the sunsets. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe. We'll see you on the next video.